Welcome to our interactive lecture. My name is Vika. People call me Vicky, Vix, Victoria, whatever floats your boat. You're here for a lecture that will be provided and delivered by myself and a colleague of mine, Ivan. The lecture is called So, You've Graduated, Now What? And basically it's a lecture from a senior recruiter lead and a hiring manager in engineering that will provide you tips and tricks on how to land your ideal dream job. What will happen is that for 30 minutes, we'll tell you a little bit more about how to identify a dream company in game dev, how to assess yourself and realize whether you qualify for an entry-level position. We'll then tell you the do's and don'ts of designing your most attractive resume, how to hack your recruiter or pass the screening call with the recruiter, how to pass the technical interview with the hiring manager, and then we'll wrap it up with the final stage of any recruitment process is either an offer from a company and how to negotiate the offer or how to handle your rejection. So that's the process. The lecture will be roughly for 30 minutes and then the remaining time will go to your questions if you will have any. Without further ado, let's start with an introduction. You go ahead first.
Thank you. Yes, please. So my name is Ivan. I currently am an engineering manager at Wargaming Vilnius. I'm responsible for a team of software engineers with different background from render engine tools and front-end developers who work on World of Tanks PC. I have a previous experience of about 11 years of a software engineer myself. I worked at Wargaming for 6 years, 4 of which are software engineer in the engine team of World of Tanks PC, then 2 years leading that specific team. And before Wargaming, I worked on several enterprise software and hardware development companies. Not all of them were related with game development, but it was fun nevertheless. So yeah, today we're gonna talk about the whole process, and without further ado, let's go.
Okay, when we rehearsed for this presentation, we were thinking what could be most useful for you. And we presented it to someone and this guy goes like, that's all great, students will love it, but you do realize you do come across a bit scary. Like today you seem like this big recruiter lady. Try to think about how you could relate to students or fresh graduates. And I remembered my first job 7 years ago, fresh out of college. I remember signing the contracts, the role was amazing here in Prague, and then the first pay slip comes. I get the money on my bank account and I see like it's 25% less than what we agreed on. I got so devastated and scared and like, what's going on? I went to the HR lady ready to fight or flight and she looks at me and she's like, yeah, you do know you pay taxes. I'm like, I pay what? Taxes. Well, that was me 7 years ago. If somebody would have told me what we're about to tell you today, it would have saved me a lot of embarrassment in that HR office.
Yeah,
and
certainly.
Today, what I do at Wargaming, I lead the Early Career Talent Program. It's a global program called Wargaming Forge. We are present here in Prague, in Vilnius, in Nicosia, Cyprus, and in Belgrade, Serbia. It's a program that's designed for students, fresh graduates, and reskilled professionals who look to enter the game dev industry and start fantastic opportunities, job opportunities in various disciplines. But about that a little later. Why don't you get started?
Sure, let's go. So first, as in the whole process, we'll start with how to find yourself a perfect company. Then we'll talk about how to maximize the chances of getting hired, what you can do about that. Okay, just a warm-up. How many of you have never had a job interview before? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see a few hands. Terrific. Of those who have, who has a solid understanding of the whole process, like 100% sure know what to do and how to get a job, the one that you like? Okay, sounds fun. I really hope you will still find something interesting today here. So, first things first, not all companies are equal. Obvious, right? So, that's an idea that has a little more info if you take it in this context. We believe that, first of all, you should find a company that actually knows what an entry position is. Have you ever seen a company that has a job posting, something along these lines, like intern or junior developer, who has to have a bachelor's degree in this sphere, who has to have 2 to 3 years of actual work experience, who knows how to use like corporate software, software management systems, source control and stuff like that. So we believe it should not work this way, that you should look for a company that wants you to learn with them and to grow with them, a company that understands and exiles these expectations from the person new to the profession, and a company who wants to create people to build the great products with, but not just build the products using these people just as a workforce or with any disregard. Please do your research while looking for a job like that, and it will save you a lot of time and energy later. And we will talk about that a little bit later. How should you do that? That's only one part. It's not only about the company or open job positions in the market. It's only and mainly about you. You have to think about what drives you in this industry and this profession. Be proactive, please, and try to think what's your internal drive that drives you there. And one more thing, where would you like to see yourself in a few years? I expected that emotion from you, actually. So I know that's a heavily overused question on interviews with recruiters and hiring managers, but let's dwell on that topic because there's a lot of going on there, actually. So in current days and times, we have companies who work on products in vastly different genres, with completely different platforms and drastically different company sizes. And all that can mean really a lot to you if you choose something you like this and today. And a few years in the future, you will see that you will be guided somewhere in a very specific knowledge area. For example, you've been working on a service, game as a service online shooter that keeps developing for the last like 3 or 4 years. And you're basically doing the same tasks, in the same job, the same product, not really developing yourself as a professional. On the other hand, that actually might be preferable if one day you decide if you like to change your life completely, forget something, and follow your passion for a new, shiny, and desirable thing. So the point of this conversation is that think about yourself, what really makes you feel enjoyed at work, and the worst thing that could happen that you will do something with the attitude like it's just work, I get my money there, while keeping all the fun or majority of the fun in the industry away from you. Okay, so the next thing to consider, introverted versus extroverted. Game development is a hugely cooperatively and collaboratively business. You will work with people with different backgrounds, different skill sets, different ideas, different ways of thinking about their job and what they do. Rarely an introverted person can find himself or herself a position where they can get some private space and focus solely on a project of their liking. You will have to cooperate with other people. You will talk a lot. So that's when the team structures are important, why company sizes matter. The larger the company, the more opportunities you have for faster growth and communicating with people with a similar background. And the smaller the company, usually, the smaller the team, the smaller the product, the more peer-to-peer communication with other people you're going to have. And you have to learn to talk to other people, basically, if it's new to you, or if you enjoy it, you will seriously enjoy it, and it's going to be a great place for you. Note the asterisks there. Reality is subject to change, so it's not a universal truth. Please just be aware of that. One more thing there. Depending on the company size and the structure, and since we're talking about the new to profession people, the larger the company is, the more chances that you're going to have a good mentor, a person you can learn with, a person who is really interested in you as a professional, growing professional. And if you are in a smaller company, chances are there are not going to be many people with you with your profession, and you will have limited opportunities to grow as a professional and at a slower pace than in a large company. but also note the asterisks there. So, with the job search, what can you do to actually find something like that? Please read Glassdoor reviews. It's an invaluable tool. You can find their replies from current employees, from former employees, from people who were not ever been there as an employees, but interviewed there and met interesting interviewers or recruiters. Please chat with ex and current employees in person on meetups like these, or in game developers sessions, or like meetups or anything like that. If you don't have any kind of prolific gatherings in your area, then internet is your friend. You can stalk people basically on LinkedIn, Twitter, Discord. Usually the game developers community is really nice and people will surely chat with you about their jobs and positions and stuff like that, and will surely be eager to help you. Okay. Next thing, so how to maximize your chances of getting hired. Let's imagine that you have found a job that you like, or you haven't found just yet, but you're gonna make yourself ready for an emerging opportunity. What can you do for yourself? How to prepare for one? And what activities actually deserve your time and energy investment? First of all, hard skills. Please work on your code samples, portfolios, tech demos, show reels, and stuff like that. It's really important thing that shows basically everything that you have learned. It's a lot about your attention to details, about your consistency in your work, about some fundamental skills like code style, design patterns, knowledge of software testing for software engineers, composition, lighting, animation, rigging, you name that, for artists, or even small playable demos for game designers. It can be a bunch of simple primitive shapes, but if it feels and looks like a game, then you're golden, so everyone likes that. Next thing, complete the team projects. And by the way, academic ones are just fine. Exactly the same, hard skills, plus people collaboration, project decomposition. It's who decides on what you should do and when, in what order, what is important, what it's not. You like this, I like that. Conflict resolution. It's a really thing that mimics the real work, the real job. So if you have never taken part in this, please do. It's a lot of fun and it's really valuable. And of course, game jams. Nothing tells more about your ability to deliver than a complete shipped product. In these circumstances, you practice everything you need in your job again, but in a little different manner. So you have strict time limits and a specific theme. So you have to decide with your team or yourself what you're going to do. And even if you fail to deliver in this limited time frame, like 2 days basically, or 48 hours to be precise, then please take your time and complete this project just for yourself with your team, because it's really important for your psychological knowledge about yourself as a person who can actually accomplish something. It's really important too. Next thing, about the interviews. So the first and foremost question that you're going to face in the interview, both with the recruiter and the hiring manager, is please tell me about yourself. And you should tell about your relevant experience. So please take your time to reflect on that we did in the previous slide, right, about the completed projects. What was good and makes you feel proud and good about yourself? What was challenging and required something to learn, something to overcome from you? And what completely was wrong and went wrong, and what you have learned from that situation, how you overcame that obstacles. We're looking for a person basically who is eager to learn, communicate, listen, and only then perform. It's really easy to, well, it's not easy, let's be honest. It's manageable to acquire some hard skills, but hard skills are only just part of our work. It's mindset, it's just being serious about the whole picture, okay? And the last thing in this block is mock-up interviews. It's an invaluable tool to get yourself ready for a real one. Please find yourself a group of friends or just family and make sure that the whole process looks and feels like a real interview, from the introduction to the final questions. The whole structure, the whole process and presence in this process makes you prepared for the real thing and lets you overcome this psychological burden of this new terrifying process of this kind of communication. If you don't have anyone available next to you, use your phone, record yourself, and listen to yourself, to how you talk, how you look. How long does it take you to form your idea into a clear speech message? So just work on it. It's a skill. You can acquire it. You can practice it. You can excel at it. Please do it. I also think to mention your posture, clarity and tempo of your speech, and maintaining an eye contact. These things are usually overlooked at, but these are really important to make yourself a more likable person. Even if your companion does not look specifically for that, they will certainly feel it. So please take that into consideration. And now I'll pass the virtual microphone to Vika. With the next step after this preparation, we're going to talk about your CVs.
Thank you. Okay, a bit of a slide here. Like I said, we will cover the do's and don'ts of the resume. So what Ivan talked about so far is how to identify the company, how to do the research. And once you've done all of this job, once you've done your research and you know the company you want to apply for, the very first thing that you need to do is to create a resume. It's going to be your first interaction with the potential hiring team. That's going to be the first thing they see about you. So you need to make sure that it's a door opening type of resume. And you know, recruiters are going to be the first ones to see your CV, and those people see dozens of CVs per day, hundreds per week. So if you avoid the most common mistakes, you increase your chances at passing through the recruitment process and finally speaking to the decision maker. So up here, we see the most common 6 mistakes that a lot of people do, and it's a big turnoff for the hiring manager, it's a big turnoff for the hiring team. So you have to be aware of these mistakes and you have to be cautious of them when you do it. So most common one, the CV is too long. Guys, trust me, like we've seen CVs that are 3, 4, 5 pages long. And sometimes you ask yourself, if a Facebook executive from the Silicon Valley with 15 years of experience can do a one-pager, I'm sure all of us can manage to do the same thing. And when you submit a CV that's 15 pages, no one is going to read it, trust me. The other one is the grammar mistakes. You might have a fantastic CV, relevant experience, but if you have a bunch of spelling mistakes, that's going to be a big no-no. If a hiring manager sees that, if a recruiter sees that, at the very minimal, they will do that, roll up their eyes. They might also reject your CV, especially if it's an entry-level job. So what you have to do, proofread it yourself, ask your friends, your family to proofread it for you, avoid those spelling mistakes. It's really, really important. And it seems like a common sense, but it's a second mistake you should be avoiding. Missing contact details. Your CV might be awesome, you're a super qualified candidate, I as a recruiter want to speak to you, and then I look at your resume, I've got no email, no phone number, no LinkedIn profile. What do you expect me to do? To go Sherlock Holmes on you? Trust me, again, unless you have like 10 years of engineering experience, a recruiter will not do it. So always ensure to add your contact details. Finally, the other 3, they're very obvious. A lot of CVs are not well organized. Unfortunately, the attention span of an average recruiter is somewhere between 6 to 9 seconds. So that's how long they spend on your CV. They will not read through it very carefully. They will basically skim through it, just looking for the most important things on the CV. So if it's not well organized, if it seems too messy, if it seems too complicated, again, they might either reject you or move forward. And again, that decreases your chances at the recruitment process. The other 2 are very important. A lot of people keep talking about their job titles, their responsibility, their scope, and very few talk about their achievements. I've delivered. My results were, I managed, I succeeded. And that takes us to the last point. People not only don't talk about their results, be it in real experience or your schoolwork, but they also use passive language. And it's, again, like a psychological effect. When you read a resume full of passive language, you ask yourself, how likely is this person to succeed in my job? So the number 1 thing that I want you to remember today is when you put together your CV, use active verbs. That's in regards to don'ts. In regards to do's, what you should do, you should Google Harvard CV Builder this tool is a game changer. It was developed by Harvard University. This is the example of how it would look like. Basically, you have a manual, so to speak, that explains to you how to build your ideal resume. It provides you a long list of action verbs. It provides you a bunch of samples. It describes where you should put your academic background, where you should put your contact details, how long it should be, what kind of font to use, etc. This tool is so fantastic. I've seen it on the best resumes for the most spectacular, high caliber talent. So definitely that's the one that you should be using too. You've done your CV, you've applied for a job, and then you finally get an email that they want to speak to you. And most likely, 99% of the time, a recruiter will want to speak to you. They will schedule a 15 to 30-minute call, either on phone or via Zoom. Very rarely they will invite you on site. Most likely they don't do that anymore. And a lot of people ask themselves, who is this recruiter? What's their job? Are they the decision maker? Are they gonna decide whether I get employed? Do I get this job? Do I not get the job? And I want to remind you, and maybe if you don't know that, I want to inform you that the recruiter is not the decision maker. Recruiter can be a lot of things. It can be your best friend. It can be a coordinator who just manages your recruitment process, schedules interviews, makes you an offer or rejects you. It can be a business consultant to a hiring manager like Ivan, telling them, oh, look, there's such an amazing candidate. You should definitely interview them. And it can also be all of these things, but not the decision maker. They can influence the decision, but ultimately they will never be the one making the decision on your hiring or not hiring. And what this means for you is that when you speak to a recruiter, you shouldn't be afraid of them. Because if you manage to make the right impression on this person, they will be your best friend, because it will be in their interest to make you get the job. The sooner you get the job, the sooner they finish their job. If you sign the offer, they close the role and they're the happiest people drinking beer on a Friday night, okay? So when the recruiter schedules the call, there are ultimately 4 things that they look for. And unfortunately, recruiters are unable to assess your technical skills, so we're not going to be able to tell how senior you are when it comes to programming or game design and whatnot. But what we look for is these 4 things. First of all, skills and background check. A hiring manager would put together the job post, like a job description. And it's the recruiter's job to ask you a series of questions and just tick the boxes, hoping, that you qualify for the job that the hiring manager looks for. The other thing that they look for is your communication skills. How well do you speak? How well can you convey your thoughts? Are you a structured communicator, or do you provide long-winded, verbose answers? You get carried away, you're unable to deal with unstructured questions. It's really, really important in that 15-minute call with your recruiter to show them that you are qualified for the role and you can convey the message in the most efficient way. Enthusiasm about the role, that's a very important one. You don't want to talk to somebody who is doing you a favor. You don't want to be convincing people that this is the job for you. You genuinely want to see authentic interest from the other side. Try to show that in your recruiter screening. And finally, this mysterious culture fit. Culture, many companies call it different things. It has different names like company DNA, company soul, company culture. But ultimately what this is like a series of characteristics that an employer ideally wants to see in their employees. Are they autonomous? Are they self-learners? Are they fast-paced, etc.? So what you should do before the recruiter screening, just Google the company, like Ivan said last year, do your research on Glassdoor and check out what they say about their culture. Very commonly, these companies will be super public about it. Read what their culture is or what their DNA is, and try to very gently, very naturally, organically incorporate it into your answer. For example, the company wants to see self-learners and autonomous people. Tell them, in my university work at this academic assignment, I took ownership. We assembled the project. So use the buzzwords that you see on their website. Easy. The top questions recruiters ask. Guys, the good thing that recruiters are very predictable. And again, they're not the hiring managers, so it's easier to pass a recruiter. These are going to be the questions that they ask over and over and over again. So 99% of the time, recruiters will ask these questions. And the good news is, if you know the question, that means you can prepare for that question. You can write down the answer, think about it beforehand, rehearse that answer either with the friend in front of the mirror, so when they do ask you, you don't look like that. The most common one they ask is, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself question is used as an icebreaker. Recruiter uses it or the hiring manager to initiate the conversation. It's not the time for you to go line by line through your resume. They don't want to hear what happened to you in high school or what you had for breakfast yesterday. What they want to see is direct evidence that you're qualified for the job and your ability to deal with unstructured questions. Your answer should be maximum 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. It should be well rehearsed. It should be succinct, engaging, and honest. Follow the SHE formula. Come today, write down your answer, and rehearse it. And after you repeat over and over and over, it will become so organic and authentic for you. Once you provide that answer to your recruiter, the recruiter will feel at ease, and the conversation will start flowing. If you're not prepared for that answer, trust me, you'll get carried away, you might get nervous, you just might say more than you planned, and again, that might decrease your chances at getting the job. The other questions that recruiters often ask are, why are you interested in working with us? That's an obvious one. They want to see your enthusiasm about the role. Are you interviewing anywhere else? That's a good one, and often you should say yes, even if you're not. Because that, increases your competitiveness, that increases your desire. An employer might be interested in speeding up the recruitment process, schedule those interviews faster, and make you an offer faster if you interview elsewhere. Because if you interview elsewhere, there might be another offer coming elsewhere, and we'll just lose our engineer, our designer, our artist. Salary expectation and start date. These are also very often ones that they ask purely logistical questions. Start date, how soon can you start this job? Can you do part-time, can you do full-time? And the salary expectations, the reason why recruiters ask this is to make sure that your expectation meets our salary range that we had for this role. In the next slide, I will tell you about the things that you should avoid doing if you want to befriend your recruiter. We now know that this person will influence the decision. They will not make a decision whether you're hired, but they might influence it. So when you're scheduled for an interview with your recruiter, don't be late for an interview. They might be late. You might hate them for that a little bit later, but you shouldn't be late. Again, that shows the commitment, the seriousness, and the enthusiasm about the role. And don't reschedule more than once. Life happens. Sometimes we need to reschedule, and that's okay. But if you do find yourself rescheduling, make sure you do that in a timely fashion and do it maximum once. Because if you do it over and over and over again, recruiter might lose interest, they might lose patience, and sooner or later they will simply reject you from the process. Don't complain about your previous employer. Remember, you need to come across as positive, somebody who will be a good team player, because in companies, in corporations, it's all about collaboration. You have to respect your interviewer. It's a chance for them to learn about you, as well as for them to spend the time to tell you about the company, about the role. So when you interview with your recruiter or with your hiring manager, especially when it's online, make sure that you dedicate the appropriate place for it, that it's quiet, it's bright, and they can see you well. There is nothing worse than when you interview someone and you just see the silhouette. You can't even see your interviewee's face. It's really inappropriate. I'm not going to comment on the one not eating. I did interview a couple of candidates who had popcorn during the interview. And please, guys, please don't negotiate your salary with the recruiter in the first call. It's not the time. I'll talk about it in a little bit. But what you can do, if you're ready to share your financial expectation, respectfully share it. If you believe that you don't know what the right answer is, if you haven't had the time to do the research, if you're afraid that you will say too much or too little, and this might be used against you, you can always respectfully say, let's circle back. I'd love to talk to the hiring manager. I'd love a chance to do the technical test. I'm more than happy to share the expectations once I learn more about the role. Most often, recruiters will not push back. Sometimes they might, but that's rarely. So if you don't know what your salary expectation is, just ask them to postpone the conversation. Otherwise, respectfully answer it and leave it at that.
Alrighty then. So we're done with the CVs, screenings, job search. Now the fun part begins, the actual interview with the hiring manager. So first of all, there's a rather simple but really important idea to understand, that it's a mutually beneficial process and not a single-sided interrogation. And it's worth repeating. It's a mutually beneficial process and not a single-sided interrogation. You are there to learn more about the position, the company, the project, etc. And we are there to learn more about you. You've had your research with Glassdoor and stuff like that. Now it's time to check that info. CVs and calls with the recruiters give us only an impression of you, but now it's time to fill all the blanks that we have. So it's up to both sides at this stage to provide enough information to make the right decision, be it hiring or just leaving for everybody. An entry-level position has a very specific expectations, as I noted before. Listen, communicate, learn, and the rest comes just automatically after that. So when we consider an interviewee for an open position, we think about several things. First of all, will it be a good fit with the existing team? Again, the cultural thing, the skills, stuff like that. Second, do we have an available mentor in our engineering or art or design team for this person? And it's actually quite a problem, you know? When you have a bunch of senior specialists, not everybody who is good at their job is good with other people. Again, think about hard skills and being a good person, they don't intersect too much. And again, about the drive and things that I told you quite a bit short enough. That's the place where you can and should demonstrate that you are genuinely interested in this position, in this project, if it really is so, and only if, because it's easy to read when you're just super excited and shining and answering all the right answers to all the right questions, but you don't have to lie to yourself, you don't have to lie to a recruiter, you don't have to lie to the engineer or to hiring manager, and that works actually both ways. So what to do there? Talk about your previous experience. We want to feel your passion, we want to feel your drive, but also we want facts, we want to know what you did, we want to know what you like, we want to know what you don't like. Because sometimes it happens that we're looking for a person for this position who has to do mundane tasks, who has to do maintenance stuff. If you tell honestly at this stage that that's not something that you would like to do in your life or in your job, it's totally fine, it's totally okay. Next, please be concise, answer the questions, and stay on topic. It's again something to talk about with the clarity of speech and clarity of thoughts, but your answers can be elaborate, your answers can be explicit, so you can just ask your interviewer if it's okay if I tell this more about that, or if you would like to know more, would you like me to explain this thing that I just taught? Ask questions in the interview. So again, that's time to recheck all the info that you've gathered. Ask about team structure, the project, the values, everything. Next slide, I will give you a brief examples of that and explain each of them. But why you should ask questions? You should check if the hiring person there actually understands what an entry-level position means, again, and has the same goals and the same ideas that you have for this position. So basically that you are aligned there, and it's important. So, examples. Position and project. That's all about the... Sometimes job posts have very limited explanation on what's the project you're going to work at and what's the theme and the tech stack, the expected style and stuff like that. You can ask it. You should ask it. If you don't ask it, that's a red flag. It means that either you just must send your CVs just anywhere to get any job or any interview, or worse, the typical working day and the regular tasks. It's important for knowing if this company is organized enough and the processes are there actually to enable you to grow there and work there, and not to be bombarded with different opinions and different tasks from different people. You should have a mentor. You should have a dedicated person who acts as a filter for you, who checks up on what you do, when you do, in what order, and with what quality. Code reviews. Again, with the mentor and the established processes in a good company, You should have someone who can tell a good done job from a bad done job. And if it's poorly done, what can be improved, what you can do to learn more, to be better, to do better, and just grow. Learning internship programs. It's good if the company has it. It's worse if the company doesn't have it, but it's not a deal breaker. If you have a good mentor, if you are told that you're going to have someone who will take care of you. Specific expectations are really important. It's about measuring actually your success and measuring your ability to fit in this company. If the company is unable to tell you what their expectations are, chances are that you're going to face really difficult questions in these time periods, because it's a probation period, it's a growth period, it's a first, let's say, conflict of interest maybe. So when you actually start to question when this learning and growing is actually going to happen, if I spend 6 months there doing pretty much the same task day over day over day over day with no significant results. Do you make and follow career growth plans for your employees? Pretty much the same. A good mentor, a good manager should be able to explain to you in a clear and concise way that you have these specific goals to achieve, you have these person or persons to ask help for, and you have these tools to achieve these goals. So you have to learn this, you have to learn that, you have to do this task, you have to do that task, and then, for example, 3 or 6 months, we're gonna gather together, get a good view of your results, and make decisions if we're going in the straight direction or we need to change something. Now, coming to a conclusion. Also, really important thing. It's absolutely acceptable to not know everything. You are not supposed to ace every single question you are being asked. You may lose some thoughts, you may not know some answers, but you still can leave a solid, good impression about yourself that leads basically to a hiring decision, okay? Please think audibly. If you don't know the answer right away to that question. Nothing is worse than a person who goes silent for a minute or two, giving just, sorry, I don't know at the end. Please provide something to the conversation. Your interviewer is a person who is interested in knowing more about you. If you give something and demonstrate your thought process, the good interviewer can use that information and guide you to the right conclusions with the right questions, additional statements that can guide your thought process. So please do that. Now, the scary part is over, and we're going to talk about the final step of this process.
Guys, raise your hand who has ever received a rejection letter when you applied for a job and they rejected you because you're not qualified. Okay. How did it feel? Any volunteers to share? Did it feel like it upset you, frustrating, disappointing? Precisely. You know, if 7 years ago when I was straight out of college, somebody explained to me why sometimes you get a rejection letter, things would have been much easier, would have saved me a lot of tears, same as it saved me embarrassment with the HR lady, the story that I shared with you. You know, any recruitment process ultimately ends, like I said, in 2 results. The second one being a more unfortunate, it's a rejection. And yes, sometimes they reject you because you're simply not qualified for a role, and that's okay. Every rejection is an opportunity for growth and learning, because with every interview, with every interaction with the hiring manager, you develop yourself. But you know what's the key takeaway here? Behind the scenes, from the company side, when we reject people, we don't always reject them because they're not qualified. Yeah. There are so many more reasons that you unfortunately don't know about because recruiters are not bothered enough to write them in the email. And the reasons can be, all of a sudden, while they were interviewing you, there was a hiring freeze at the company. A month ago, the company wanted to hire you or anybody else for this role, and then 30 days in, decided to put it on pause, and they send you a rejection letter. Or there was an internal candidate that they prioritized over external people outside of the company. Maybe there was somebody else in the process earlier, like, I don't know, 2 weeks before you even applied, and they made them an offer. So when you get a rejection letter, please do not get frustrated, do not get upset, There are so many more companies because you guys have something that nobody else has. We want to say that we millennials, we're like, tech savvy, but you're the Generation Z. You are the only workforce generation that's entering workforce that does not have significant pre-smartphone era memory. And that means you are tech native, you're stress resistant, you're self-learners, and you're people who are show the fastest pace. You're so adaptable, so flexible, so agile. So if you get a rejection, it's not the end of the world. And you have to remember you have something that the rest of the workforce today in the companies don't. So that's in regards to the rejection. In regards to the offer is a more positive side. So they can make you an offer and you accept it, fantastic. End of your journey, you're about to start with the company. But what if they make you an offer, you want to join them, but the compensation is not ideal? I want to maybe shed some light on a very common myth. A lot of people believe that companies always offer less than they have budgeted. That's not the case, truly, I'm telling you. Some companies are still doing that. But a lot of companies nowadays are truly making the best offer they can for the budget that they assigned for this role. So before you negotiate, or if you feel like you negotiate, I beg of you, do your research. Go online, go on Glassdoor, Google the role, assess yourself and the role seniority very objectively, unbiased. You have to do the research and understand what this role could potentially pay against the requirements that they're making and your strengths. And only after that research, if you believe that it's still on the lower side of the range, only then you should go and negotiate. Remember earlier in the presentation, I told you not to negotiate right after the first call. That's because they're not interested in you just yet. The first call is just an introduction. They're just starting to get to know you. The offer stage, though, this is the time when to negotiate. This is the time when they identified you as the candidate, as a high caliber person that they want to see on site. So what you should do, you should thank them, as always, respectfully, and say that you look forward to joining the company, you're happy where things are headed, remind them of the interview and the strength and the value that you can bring to the table against the expectations that the hiring manager might have shared during the process. And then state a number and ask them, would that work for you? And then two things will happen. If the recruiter made you an offer, and remember, recruiter is not the hiring manager, they will take your expectation or your request and go to the hiring manager or the compensation and benefits team to discuss it and come back to you. Sometimes they can come back with a better offer. Sometimes they can say that, unfortunately, we cannot make any changes. Sometimes you can possibly negotiate the benefits. It all depends on the situation. So treat it on case-by-case basis. Sometimes, if you share it with the hiring manager, they might not always know what to answer because the compensation was formulated or put together with HR. So don't expect an answer right away. If they don't reply for a couple of days, it's still okay. They're just taking their time to analyze the potential comeback and tell you what they can offer. At Wargaming, we started this presentation. Thank you. We started with this presentation with an introduction, and we told you about Wargaming Forge. It's this new program that we're doing here, an early career internship program. We are very much present in Prague and in other European cities where we have offices. And ultimately, we offer two possibilities for early career talent, for students and graduates and reskilled professionals. First one being on the right side is the internships. The internships that we offer are flexible working hours. They're always paid with benefits, and they're from 3 till 6 months. Most often, we start our internships in winter and summer cycles right after your exams or before your exams. So you don't, so you have the balance between life and work. The internships are done with our mentors, like Ivan said, who designed the program with you in mind. Because if you improve, we improve and our games improve. And the internships are always there to provide our interns a possibility to make a mistake and learn. The thing about the internships with Wargaming is that we try to foster the dev game community here. So all the internships, they are related to game dev. 2 months ago in Prague, we hired 26 interns in 7 different disciplines. front-end engineering, back-end engineering. We had UX design, we had 2D art, technical art, live operations, and social media interns who work on the game. Also, there is another program that Wargaming Forge offers. It's the training courses. And that's slightly different. We do not hire people, but we provide external training courses that run roughly for 2 months. And there you get like a hybrid model where you can get most of the content online and study in your own time. And at the same time, on a weekly basis, you get to meet with your mentor or trainer, get individual feedback, ask them questions, provide them your homework assignments that are done during the course, get the feedback from them. And the best students who graduate from these courses get an opportunity to join us either as interns or full-time employees, depending on the level. And then the next slide, if you guys are interested, right now we are starting with the quality assurance course. The applications will finish next Monday. So make sure to check it out. Go on our landing page. There you can find all of the information about the internships, the pay, the disciplines, when the next cycle is, when you should apply. And if you apply for any of our programs, either the internships or the training courses, you will always have a recruitment process. Not as intense as we described right now, that takes it to the next level, but any recruitment process will include submitting your resume. So make sure to Google Harvard CV Builder and make that ideal one-pager with contact details and no grammar mistakes. It will include a technical test, regardless of what role you might be applying for. We always ask for a technical test. And then it can either be a video interview or a face-to-face interview here on site. I guess that's it.
One more thing.
Go for it.
As a quest for a job application goes, there's a thing to say.
Yes. There is a booth downstairs where we can tell you so much more about this. And we also give out some swag and presents if you present the Easter egg. And the Easter egg, do I just say it like that? Or should I be more ambiguous about it?
No, it's
okay. The Easter egg is offer accepted. So if you come downstairs to our booth and you talk to our receptionist and say you attended the lecture, say offer accepted, and they will give you a present. So I was supposed to
Thank you for coming.
Sorry, guys. Thank you.